Molla and Nazia stood in the prison yard, watching as the inmates lined up for lunch. Large pots of food were being ladled out by other prisoners, and the scent of boiled lentils and spices filled the air. The two journalists were on a mission to learn more about Hasna, the enigmatic inmate who was due to be persecuted in just a few days. They knew that they had a crucial task ahead of them, and they wanted to gather as much information as possible before they interviewed her. She does not talk to many people. Or you can say, other inmates, avoid her. There are rumors that once a woman tried to talk to her, but she broke her teeth. Another time, an old woman was assigned to stay with her. A few days later, the woman died. Police said that the old woman died a natural death. But the rumors are the old woman had a serious problem with snoring. So she killed her by strangling her with a pillow. Since she was already sentenced to death, police didn't dig this case very much. Another woman said while pouring a spoon of dal. One of the inmates complained about how the lentil soup actually is water with turmeric. The inmate who was serving the food barked at her and said, "If you don't like it, then no need to eat it." Molla felt a shiver run down her spine as she listened, but she was determined to get to the bottom of the story. Just then, a curious young woman approached them, carrying a tray of food. She had tied her hair in a bun and was wearing the inmates' clothes. But her clothes looked much cleaner than the rest of the inmates. "Excuse me," she said, looking at the reporter. "I heard you're here to interview Hasna. I can tell you a little bit about her if you'd like." Nazia perked up. "Yes, please. Anything you can tell us would be helpful." The woman sat down at their table and began to speak. "Hasna is a very private person," she said. "She doesn't talk to many people, and she keeps to herself. But I've seen her do some remarkable things. There's something about her that's both terrifying and equally amazing. I have heard that she killed one of her husbands and then chewed his liver just like this." She bit into her flatbread. Just then, another woman joined the conversation. "And don't forget about the women who used to visit her," she said. "She died a few days later. The police say it was a natural death, but there are rumors that Hasna killed her from the prison using her connections. Since that woman could not get out of the prison." Molla's heart skipped a bit. She listened intently, scribbling notes in his diary as Nazia captured the conversation on camera. She felt a growing excitement as she learned more about Hasna, and she knew that she was getting closer to uncovering the truth. And as the woman finished her story, she made a mental note to ask Hasna about it when she had the chance. Strich. Molla and Nazia entered the dimly lit cell, their footsteps echoing in the quiet space. A figure was seated on a small cot in the corner, her long dark hair spread across her face like a veil. Hasna wore a traditional white salwar kameez, befitting her Bangladeshi heritage. As they approached, Molla noticed the delicate features of Hasna's face, marred only by a small scar on her right cheek. Despite her reputation as one of the most dangerous prisoners in the jail, there was something almost fragile about her. "Hello Hasna," Molla said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're here to interview you for a news story. I'm Molla, and this is Nazia." Hasna said nothing, her head still bowed. Molla cleared her throat and began the interview. "Can you tell us about your background? How did you end up here?" There was no response from Hasna, and Molla exchanged a worried look with Nazia. They had heard rumors that Hasna rarely spoke to anyone, but they had hoped that she would be more forthcoming in an interview. Hasna still didn't answer. The room was filled with an eerie silence. Suddenly, Hasna stood up and walked towards the iron bars of her cell. Molla and Nazia exchanged a quick glance, both realizing the danger they were in. They quickly gathered their things and left the cell, their hearts racing. They both knew they had to be careful with the information they gathered and how they portrayed Hasna in their story. After all, she was still a human being, regardless of her past actions. "Is it true you killed 7 men?" Nazia asked curiously. She couldn't limit her curiosity anymore, since Hasna didn't look anything as she imagined. She thought Hasna would be someone with a monstrous look. After all, killing 7 men is not child's play. She realized her mistake when Molla glared at her. Nazia realized her mistake and became silent. Hasna was still silent. She just stood there, her eyes fixated on something beyond the walls of the jail. It was as if she was looking at something far, far away. The silence was deafening, and the stillness of her body was eerie. The creaking sound of the old wooden cot could be heard in the background. Then slowly, Hasna raised her eyes and looked directly at Nazia, piercing her with a cold, unreadable gaze. The hair on the back of Nazia's neck stood on end as she felt a chill run down her spine. Hasna's eyes were dark, almost black, and her expression was blank, unreadable. Suddenly she said, "What will you do after knowing my story? It's a waste of everyone's time. Just leave." Nazia and Mala were taken aback by her sudden reply. They looked at each other and then back at Hasna. Nazia tried to reason with her, "But Hasna, the world wants to know your story. Your story can inspire so many people. It can help people understand what led you to do what you did." Hasna looked up and her eyes met with Nazia's. Her eyes were filled with pain and sadness. She replied in a calm voice, "Inspire? To do what? To kill people." She said with a hint of bitterness in her voice. "I am not someone who should be looked up to or admired. I am a convicted murderer, sentenced to die for my crimes. There is no romanticizing or justifying the taking of another human life. If you truly want to make an impact with your writing, then write about the things that can better our society and benefit the next generation. Highlight the importance of kindness, compassion, and morality in today's world. That is a story worth telling." If they didn't know about her truth, then they definitely would have thought she was a protagonist fighting for justice. But the situation was completely opposite here. Her words stung them. Both Nazia and Mala felt irritated. They didn't come here to hear a murder convict lecture them on morals and virtues. "Is that so? Why did you kill those innocent men? Didn't you kill them for money? First, trapping them in love marriage, then killing them. Yet, you have the audacity to lecture us? Whom are you trying to fool?" Nazia taunted. Nazia's words were harsh and cutting, and they seemed to hit Hasna like a physical blow. Hasna's face hardened, and she locked eyes with Nazia, unblinking. "You're right," she said slowly. "I did kill those men. And I did it for money. But what good is money when you're locked up in a cell, counting down the days until your own death?" Hasna's voice became quiet and sad. "I have made mistakes, terrible mistakes. And I regret my actions. Go and write that, I have realized my mistakes. Go and tell everyone that, I want to turn the wheel of time and save them all. Because I have learned my lesson." The room was filled with a heavy silence after she finished speaking, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Strich. As Mala and Nazia left the cell, they whispered to each other with a hint of skepticism. "Did you see that? That's how she traps people. Pretending to have remorse when she's about to die," Nazia said in a hushed tone. Mala nodded in agreement. "Absolutely. Don't be fooled by her words. If she ever gets out of prison, she'll be back to her old ways in no time." With those words, they walked away, leaving Hasna alone with her thoughts. Strich.